I couldn't sleep. It was just one of those nights I couldn't really sleep. And so it's probably about 2 in the morning, and I just got up and wandered through into the studio, and I didn't turn any lights on. I didn't sort of, sometimes you don't want to do that at night, and there was no moon outside. It was just one of those like really dark nights. And I walked into the studio and I just had this really interesting experience of realizing that as I kind of turned my body around the room, I didn't know where the paintings were. It was like someone had shuffled the cards, so I didn't know which painting was what. But as I turned my body towards them, I could feel them. So it wasn't just feeling like, I know that painting. It was like I could feel what the painting felt like. I could feel the kind of energy of it, or, all the paintings kind of have these different, quite shifting energies about them. But, and sometimes they do kind of swing between feeling like, kind of grief or bliss, or like, like that, they're slippery like that, which is what I'm kind of trying to do. I could feel that, so as I turned my body in different directions, I got these kind of, just these really strong feelings of the energy and the feeling of who that painting was. Not a particular person, but like how that painting was, I guess. And in that moment, I just thought, wow, this is what I want to be doing. I want to be, it's that kind of beautiful ancient storytelling. Like storytelling loves the dark. It's always people always kind of tell stories around a fire in the dark, and like for eons, that's the time of day, and those sort of twilight shifting times, and in the darkness, that's when we gather. And so I kind of thought, this is what I want to do with, what is it to build paintings for the darkness, so really that's what this is. It's like trying to make an exhibition where the work's felt before it's seen. When I'm making, I'm just pushing paint around until it kind of hits a nerve, and activates the feeling. So this is really trying to lean on that and test that in this show. The exhibition is called Thresholding. I feel like I'm always on this kind of journey of feeling out these trans kinships, really, so the mangroves are like that, living between the kind of tide and the ocean. And then the keening was the last show I did, which again is sort of calling between worlds in the Celtic traditions. And then stuff with the selkies moving between seal and human bodies, like all of these stories which are about sort of shape-shifting, or all of that idea. And so with this, it was kind of like looking at what are the visual languages of twilight? What's the visual language of dusk and of dawn? And so, and also what are the energetic languages of the dusk and the dawn? So I have spent a lot of time just physically walking around in those times, really, really early morning, really late at night, and just trying to learn about that language. So I guess, but the point being that a threshold is moving from one state to another, or one place to another. And so then thresholding is just this word I invented to try and talk about what about not making the transition? What about if we pause and hold in the threshold? This exhibition that I've been building is going down to Pātaka in Porirua, which is amazing because it's a space where I've seen so many incredible shows over the years, work that's really moved me. So it feels really, it's so special to be making work to kind of bring back for that conversation. It opens on the 24th of July and runs through until the 30th of October. What I'm doing in the exhibition is you'll walk into the exhibition, and the lighting setup is so that basically all of the walls are painted this kind of deep midnight blue, like behind me. And we're going to have these really dim lights which just kind of come up and down really softly, kind of mimicking the cycles of dawn and dusk, and these very kind of half lights. And so I guess it's kind of moving more away from the white box of art gallery, and and into more like the black box of theatre. I hope it will slow us down enough to have an experiment with feeling painting, with feeling before we can see, you know, and to hopefully give the experience of what it's like to be felt by a painting. The paintings themselves are literally, you know, I guess kind of in a real literal way, they're thresholds in the sense that they are this kind of surface or this skin which is between being made and being viewed. I think that role is actually much wilder than we realise. I think we're kind of going into the darkness and the winter and the slowness. I think it's a really different way of receiving stories and of participating in storytelling, and paintings are really slow to make. Yeah, it's pigment, it's oil, it's manual, it's, part of making this exhibition is trying to create a space for the stories that are really slow stories. There's conversations that need more time and that need more nuance and that need to be able to be complicated, and and I just feel like, and that's for me, that's something that painting is like, you know, the studio, like this space is that. It is this kind of old world cave that slows everything down, that there's no shortcuts, you can't do any of that. You kind of really, and it really brings me into my body because it's so physical, and and I think what I'm trying to do here is just like create a world for these all to go into. So talking about these two works behind me, Cavern and Soluble, I think they're really kind of interesting. They feel like they really anchor the show, I guess, or the touchstones in terms of some of the kind of ideas and really different expressions of similar things. So Soluble has a real density and a real quietness, even though it's actually completely covered in pigment. There's no breathing space, there's no air in there, and yet, you know, as its name suggests, it sort of dissolves in that somehow. You know, it's Cavern is more of the technically some of the stuff I've been experimenting with over the last kind of years since the mangroves, since I started working with the mark making language in the mangroves. These sort of spindly lines and lots of gaps and lots of breathing space, and you know, choreography. Like for me, actually painting is like, it feels like choreography. It feels like the same kind of language. It's about space, distance, rhythm, all of that kind of stuff. Ironically, it has there's a lot less kind of marks or paint, but it just creates this little hole to go through, you know? And I think they work with each other in their kind of openness and closedness. And again, so then the kind of between these paintings, it feels like as well, they become a kind of threshold in themselves to go through. You know, I'm working with faces. I avoided working with faces and with the body for such a long time because I just felt like there was so much baggage, art historical baggage, and like, you know, and we don't even see them. You know, we're so used to like portraiture, we're so used to faces that we just, it's wallpaper, you know. But I have also learnt that is actually where its power is, you know. So we walk around in the world, we're constantly reading, like in this moment, I'm reading your face, so much of how we communicate is the sort of sculptural language of watching each other's expressions and faces, and that's how we, for some of us, that's how we work. I think there's an accessibility in just being able to kind of walk and, you know, like I think my mum just kind of if she sees a face, she's like, oh yeah, I know where that is, walk on in, you know, and so there's not a kind of, I mean, I love really complicated work that doesn't have that, but for me, that is actually a part of it. So there's this kind of a hospitality to coming towards something familiar. But then what I'm really hoping is happening with the work is that an engaging in that really familiar way, like we aren't then in our heads trying to think really hard, it's just like dropping straight into the feeling, and then that's where we can go somewhere. That's where it kind of opens up and shifts and changes. And I think portraiture is fundamentally pretty boring, and that's a big part of why I use it, because I feel like we enter it, we engage in it in a sort of sleepy way, you know, in a sleepy, over familiar way. And then when we're half asleep, that's when we dance, that's when things shapeshift, that's when we kind of unravel. And, you know, so it really works for me using that. So I think these paintings, you know, my wish with them is they all have origin points, you know, they all have actually multiple origin points. One of the origin points is the people that who's the person who's loaning me their bones to begin a painting, you know. And then they have a whole lot of other threads and origin points as well. They have a lot of these kind of yellowed works, where when I was watching, again in this twilight type of time, there's been a lot of storms out here in the Kaipara, and the sky yellows, and then it bruises purple colours, and then it you know, so there's all these, when I think of kind of the origins, I think of all of these different elements that are coming together to make a starting point for a painting. I'm not trying to paint a picture of the person that is starting the painting. That's sort of the furthest thing from my mind, and a lot of the works go such a long way away. And I worked one time with my sister, and I showed her this painting, and she was like, oh yeah, amazing. And I was like, does anything seem familiar? And she was like, no, anyway, she totally couldn't, you know, and that's often the case. They really go a long way from from that particular origin thread. There are plenty of people who do incredible portraits that stay really close to people. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find what the painting has to say, you know, find the feeling or the energy or the sensations that happen live in the painting process. And you know, 98% of people that ever see that painting won't have any connection to that initial person. So the work has to live as its own energy, as its own entity, and also, I mean, the beautiful thing about, for me, what I spend my time doing is painting. So in painting is wild, and it's slippage, and it's kind of sloppy, and it's strange, and it, you know, like I don't want to have to boss it around anywhere. The fun part for me is following where it goes. And so so it's a huge gift that people allow me to work with their form as a starting point to have it dance off in a completely different direction. Here there's been a big sometimes the paint is really soft.